Hello, it's Lesbian Christmas. They let me read an arc of the Felicity Complex by August Clarke, which was all I've wanted in this world. I'm a bit of an August Clarke fan. I have a normal number of August Clarke books, and therefore this was my most anticipated book of the year. Um, Only partially because Electo the Ninth doesn't exist and never will. But I was very excited to read it, and I loved it, and I'm just gonna yap about it for however long this video is. This will be a spoiler-free review discussion. The book's not out yet. I don't want to spoiler it. It comes out on July 28th, 2026. I don't know when I'll post this video. Maybe before that. Maybe I'll wait till the book comes out. Whatever. I'm still not going to spoil anything because I don't want to spoil an August Clarke book for you. And also, it's more about the ride. It's sort of about the experience and the characters and just like enjoying what's happening. And there are like some like twists and, cool plot stuff driving it and like questions that you want answered. But really, it's kind of a character study sort of book. This is a dystopian sci-fi horror satire about 6 women created in a lab who are hired to become immortal concierges, maintenance workers, domestic workers in a billionaire's doomsday fallout luxury bunker. The book is sectioned into 2 different timelines, before and after. Before is when our main characters are in the laboratory being created, just learning how to be people, learning that they're going to be these workers in this bunker, learning their roles, learning their names, learning what's expected of them, and then the after section is them 100 years later when they finally have people in the bunker to take care of. And that's where a lot of the mystery of the novel comes in. Like, how long has it been? It's 100 years. You know that. I think that's in the marketing. Who are these people that have come, these like rich people who are fleeing from something? What has happened in the outside world, and also what has happened to these 6 women, these specimens living inside this bunker, alone, isolated for the last 100 years. Because you can tell there's definitely a change in them. Something has happened between the characters. There's interpersonal conflict, but also they're just different. How does living in a bunker for 100 years, completely isolated from humanity, change you a little bit? And in some of the after chapters, we sort of have more omniscient narration where we're seeing sort of the big picture of like everyone in the bunker, and then sometimes these new people who have come, I want to call them refugees, who have come to the bunker for safety. But for the most part, we are in the point of view of our main character, Hallelujah. She is one of the specimens that has been created for this lab. She is a really good character. She's very naive. She was literally born yesterday. Actually, not literally. They've been working on her for a long time, but basically she's been born yesterday. At the start of the books, it's like the first time she's really been able to come out of her vat that they created her in and sort of talk to all of the scientists and get to know everybody and become a person, possibly. That's the theme of the novel is, what is human and also what is womanhood. These specimens are created to embody all of the traditional ideals of American femininity. But that's also sort of an afterthought because initially these specimens were created as some sort of government scientific experiment. I don't know if it's really a spoiler to say what they are, but you learn pretty early on that the first iterations of these specimens were boys. They were meant to be soldiers, like super soldiers for the US government, and then the scientist leading this Dr. Young husband lost the funding from the government contract and had to be bought up by a billionaire. A billionaire guy named Mr. Pink. His father was a televangelist. His mother owns several amusement parks. And he is a rich billionaire dude, exactly like you'd expect him to be. And he bought these experiments so that he could have immortal staff for his bunker. And he wants them to be women. And he wants them to be beautiful, typical feminine ideals. So this is a pretty classic, like, robot woman story. These people aren't robots. These specimens aren't robots. They're flesh and blood, but they're, weird scientific experiment flesh and blood. But there are other books like this that grapple with the same themes of like, what is a human? What makes someone human? And also what makes a woman? So this has sort of been done before, but it's kind of an August Clarke twist. There's more about sort of gender here and sexuality. Honestly, not as much as I expected. Like, I thought this could go like really deep into like gender, trans stuff, ideology. And it does a little bit, but it sort of does that with some of the side characters and not our main point of view character. Our main point of view character is limited, but in a fun way, because she's so naive. She's sort of the only specimen who genuinely buys into this idea that She's gonna be a protector. She's gonna be a helper. It's a God-given privilege to care for all of the rich people in this bunker, the presidents and the actresses, and all of these important people, and she gets to help them and nurse them, and isn't that great? She wants to make the scientists happy. She wants to make the billionaires happy. And she really wants to find purpose and have purpose and be fulfilled in that. And when things start to go wrong, she very humanly denies it. It's like, no, this will be good. I have to believe in my mission. I have to believe that this will get better, that I will feel better, that all of this will turn out okay, that this was the right decision, this was the right commitment. So she's sort of the ideal specimen in a lot of ways. Not colors the character. I like her journey of learning, maybe there's more here that she should be questioning. And some of the other specimens are quicker to question those things. And quicker to question their origins and, like, how they started and, like, are they human? Are they women? Things like that. But that's not so much a focus of our main character. But it's definitely happening there. And Hallelujah, while not necessarily genderqueer at all, she's gay. She's gay. I think they're all sort of, like, vaguely bisexual or just, like, open. They don't really talk about sexuality, but she's absolutely head over heels in love with another one of the specimens, Anastasia. So there is, like, a lesbian relationship here. And then some of the other specimens are, like, hinted at, like, maybe having something going on. I could have done with more monster orgies in this book. They're trapped in a bunker for 100 years with no one but each other. You're telling me there weren't a lot of orgies happening? Maybe there were. It doesn't say there's not orgies happening. But, 6 women built to serve, trapped in a bunker together for 100 years. I don't know. I would have liked to hear more about what was going on there. Not really the focus of the novel. But somewhere I did kind of think this was going to go, or might touch on. But it's not. It's not a sexy novel. Like, Metal from Heaven by this author does have some sex scenes. This doesn't really have sex scenes at all. And a lot of the sex scenes are just, like, hinted at, fade to black, cut to black, which I liked in a lot of these cases because there's absolutely some sexual violence in this book that is hard to read, hard to stomach. Do check the trigger warnings for this, but you kind of know where this is gonna go because there's 6 women-shaped objects that really none of these scientists or these billionaires, they don't see them as people. They're like, oh, these are female-shaped objects that are built to serve me, and you can guess where that goes. And you are very aware throughout the whole book that that is a constant underlying threat to these women, even before they realize it, or even before, like, Hallelujah realizes it. She's the most naive, and so even when she's not thinking about it, you as the reader are like, oh no, please don't go into a room alone with that man. I don't trust that. And that was the most horrific part of this novel for me. There is, like, some gore. These are, like, weird, super strong monster women. Some violence and, like, fight scenes do happen. But really, like, the most unsettling thing about this book is, like, the underlying constant threat of objectification and sexual violence that could be or is or might happen against these women at any point in time. And that did give me, like, a slight sick-to-my-stomach sense for, like, a good part of this book. Even when it's being funny, because it is a lot of funny moments, there's a lot of, like, slapstick comedy. I remember one specific moment where Hallelujah is stepping out of her vat, but of course she's wet and there's water on the floor and she just fucking goes backward and falls over on her ass. And I was really picturing, like, cartoon fucking slapstick, just whoop, with a sound effect. I don't know why that specifically was so funny to me, but there are a lot of little funny moments like that. We do have a very naive character, which lends itself very well to the comedy in this, but it makes the sort of sexual violence even that more unsettling, because she doesn't know to expect it a lot of the times, and it's like, oh no, Hallelujah, my baby girl. And it does happen repeatedly. Most of it isn't on the page. Again, it's sort of like the sex scenes where it's happening over there. It's sort of referenced, a lot of it's sort of referenced, like, subtly or after the fact. These characters also exploit themselves or exploit other people. There's sex work, but not, like, in a traditional sense, where it's like a respected, understood transaction between 2 equal parties. These specimens realize that they can sort of bribe the scientists or bribe the electricians building the bunker, like anyone. They can bribe the men around them to get them treats, bring them playing cards or cigarettes or vinyls or magazines. They get porno mags. Hallelujah really wants porno mags so she can look at more titties, which is funny. But also, they're sort of sleeping with these men in order to get these things. Sometimes they aren't. Sometimes they'll go up to someone and the man's like, "Are you guys like really trapped down here, like alone? Like you aren't actors. Like you're really being like human trafficked and stuck in a bunker for 100 years. That's kind of fucked up. I'll just like bring you cake for free. I don't wanna do anything." So some of the men are sort of moral and will just like bring them things because they feel bad, but also they don't really ever help. There's one guy, Hallelujah tries to seduce him, and he's like, no, thank you. I have a wife. I don't feel good about this. I pity you guys real bad. Would you like some cake? My wife is good at making cake. I'll bring you some cake. And then he brings some cake, but also he doesn't like report the sort of human trafficking that's going on. He does offer to drive them away. I'll give him that. He's like, do you guys like need a ride into town? I can drop you off at a hospital. And they don't go for it. But he doesn't like report it. So he's not the worst guy, but arguably could have been better. But a lot of these guys do sleep with them and give them things. And on one hand, the specimens kind of like this, or like, it's their idea to do it a lot of the time. And they see it as a sort of fair exchange. But it's also, to you, the reader, like, it's not like traditional sex work. Because these women have nothing. Like, they have literally nothing except their bodies. Like, they do not own anything. They don't even really own their bodies. And they aren't in control of their bodies, and their bodies are weird and, like, not entirely human. They're made of, like, some weird substance, and, like, everything goes wrong, and they have to have, like, these transfusions of, like, serum, which is some kind of medicine that, like, keeps them in shape and stops them from growing crazy tumors, and, so they have nothing, and all they can offer in return for anything is their body, and they have, like, no real autonomy, and like, I don't know, in a human sense that we understand it. They have no freedom, but they try to make the most of it, and they do what they can, and they sort of make their own freedoms in that way. But it's also always like skeezy, and you hate all of these men, and you wish that they didn't have to do it like this. So there's definitely an underlying just threat of sexual violence that makes this so yucky. Again, that was the most horrific part for me. I could stomach the horror. It was the weird, skeezy men. I didn't like that. So if you're sensitive to that topic, you might have some trouble with this book. I'm not that sensitive to reading about that, and this did, like, skeeze me out repeatedly. But if you're worried about, like, gore, not a lot of gore. I really like the gory sections, though. I like horror that's very horrific. And also August Clarke, as a writer, his prose really stands out during those moments when he can, like, go wild with the description and, like, all of these cool concepts. He can just put his lush prose on it. I like August Clarke's writing. I don't think this is, like, the strongest display of August Clarke's potential as a writer, and I think a lot of that just comes from Hallelujah being so naive as a character. She doesn't have these sort of experiences to, like, describe things, or she doesn't have this, like, vast, analytical, philosophical mind. She's sort of simple-minded and naive, which is fun, and brings into other things and, like, shows August Clarke's comedy chops, but it doesn't really show, like, those beautiful, vibrant descriptions that I think August Clarke is really, really known for. There's definitely moments, though. It's definitely not bad writing at any point in time, but I don't think it's, like, the pinnacle of August Clarke as a writer. There's still really good moments, though. Like what I was talking about earlier with Hallelujah, having this sort of limited perspective. There's a line early in the book where she describes something as blue or something. Like, she's describing, I don't remember. But she says, like, it's blue like the sky, or like the sea. And you as the reader are like, she doesn't really know the sky or the sea. So that's kind of like a weird way for her to describe anything. That's a very human description. Like, we see the sky and the sea as ubiquitous. So we see something blue and we're like, blue, the sky. But Hallelujah's never seen the sky. So at first that line seems like, maybe not the best writing in the world. But these women, these specimens, are being shown, like, movies and pictures and being taught about the outside world. So even though she's never seen the ocean or seen the sky, she knows what those things are. Those are being taught to her, And she is being trained on like human turns of phrases. She's watching movies. She understands language and how people speak. And so it does make sense for her to commodify. That's not the word. It makes sense for her to claim that phrasing and use it. And so it's not like that bad. But then at the end of the book, there's a line where Hallelujah is describing something. And she's like, his eyes are blue, like the sea or like the ocean. And then she's like, no, I've never actually seen the ocean. His eyes are blue like the wires in the laboratory, like the color of my uniform, like rat poison. And I was like, what a great fucking callback to show like how she has become a person with her own experiences. And she is not just this robot that is being fed information anymore. And she doesn't think in their terms, she thinks in her own terms and her own experiences. And like, what a way to show growth. And like, what just a fun little, just fantastic writing detail in the quality of the writing. August Clarke. So like, this absolutely is well written. It's just the premise that like doesn't allow for like traditional August Clarke writing. This is not anywhere near as dense as Metal from Heaven, which I think you could see as a positive or a negative thing, depending on what you like. I really love Metal from Heaven. I know most people love Metal from Heaven or hate it because they thought it was too dense. If you thought Metal from Heaven was too dense, you'll like this one better probably. The writing's more straightforward. We're sort of dealing with, I don't want to say we're dealing with smaller themes, but our main character isn't like philosophizing about those themes. You are putting the work in to assess the themes as the reader, whereas Marnie is very Marnie's thinking big picture. She's got a lot of thoughts going on. So it feels pretty different from Metal from Heaven in that sense. I guess all of August Clarke's books have felt really different from each other, if you count the Scape Racers as like one entity instead of a trilogy of books individually. I saw a tweet from them, or a Blue Sky post from them, whatever that's called. They called this a gut novel and said that their next novel would be a brain novel, which I like. I think I like maybe their brain novels a little bit better. I still liked this, but I think, like, Metal from Heaven, you just reread that and you just absorb something new every time. And I feel like The Scape Racers is kind of a gut novel. And then Metal from Heaven after that was the brain, and then the Felicity Complex is a gut, and then the next book is a brain. I don't know if they're going for that pattern at all, or if I'm just talking out of my ass. This author definitely has some range, but still, like, it feels like August Clarke. I was highlighting lines that feel like August Clarke lines. And I can't really quote any of them to you because this is an art copy. Theoretically, it could get changed. You're not supposed to quote arcs. One phrase I highlighted was bruisey purple. I think he's written the phrase bruisey purple in every single one of his books. I think it only comes up twice in this one. That just felt like an August Clarke line. I don't know how to explain an August Clarke line to you, but I feel like if you've read August Clarke, you know what I'm talking about. There was one other line I quoted that I will quote. It's literally the phrase, she suffers. In this book, it's a reference to, she's seeing Anastasia for like one of the first times, and she's like, oh my god, this woman is so beautiful. What is this feeling that comes over me? She suffers. I read that and immediately was transported into Metal from Heaven, where there is a line that is, I suffered. Oh, I suffered. I sound fucking delusional quoting two words. But no, like, if you're there. In Metal from Heaven, I suffered is in the first sex scene with Vicare, where Marnie realizes that she doesn't have her dick with her. Her strap-on's in another room upstairs, and she can't fuck Vicare with the strap, and she doesn't have her cock, and she's like, I suffered. That sounds fucking... you had to be there. That sounds... you can't... I can't explain that to you. You just have to feel I suffered in your gut while you're reading that book. That Stone Top doesn't have her dick with her. She suffered, dude. That hit me both times I've read Metal from Heaven. I've only read it twice so far, but like, I remember on the first read being like, oh my god, what a fucking succinct way to explain that feeling. I suffered. You either get that or you don't. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm looking for other things to talk about. And I'm just realizing that Kindle does tell you how many, like, highlights you've made. I made 219 highlights in this book, if that tells you anything. I think in Metal from Heaven I had, like, 500, I'm not gonna lie. It was, like, 400 and something. Both of those numbers are significantly higher than average. August Clarke's just that good. Where I was highlighting, like, thematic things, like lines that like really embodied what this book was trying to say, or like the cute romance moments. I like those. Or like August Clarke lines. What other August Clarke lines did I highlight? Twingy greenish pain. That feels like something straight out of Metal from Heaven with like the colors. The main character like goes into anaphylactic shock and like sees colors and is in pain. That feels like a Metal from Heaven line. That's probably why I did that. I've marked as an August Clarke line. One of the characters is named Winifred. That's an August Clarke line. So let's talk about the names in this book. Batshit fucking August Clarke names. August Clarke loves a weird fucking name. The main character in the Scapegracers is named Sideways Pike because they're not straight. And then the naming conventions in Metal from Heaven are so unnecessarily complex. That's a fantasy novel with like different countries with different histories and different world buildings, and every country has like their own naming system, and the book doesn't tell you any of that. You just pick it up as you go along, and for a lot of it you're like, I don't care, or it's not like that relevant. But if you actually dig into it, like you can tell August Clarke put so much thought into the naming conventions of each of these countries in Metal from Heaven. Like, you have one group of people who all choose a virtue to live by, and then that becomes their name. The villain is named Industry. Literally, the villain is named Industry. And you have names like Dignity and Truth. And then there's other countries that have just, like, weird, unpronounceable fantasy names. And every once in a while, a name will be, like, phonetically spelled out for you. Like, I think Utheste is one of the characters whose name actually gets, like, pronounced. And I was like, oh, that's not what I was saying at all. So I'm just sure I pronounced like half of the names in that book just wrong. So I still haven't figured out like their phonetic conventions of that country. I don't know if I'd bother to try. Like, why would I bother to try? But like I feel like you could. Like, I do think August Clarke literally had a methodology and like actually thought about it. And that does add immersion and like genuine world building to the book. Where that's just a part of the book. You can take it or leave it. You can care about it or not. It doesn't change anything, but that's real. Different countries have different naming conventions. There's a character named Alexandra Thu Alexandra, who sometimes they call her Alexandra L. And on my first read I was like, what's the L stand for? Her name is Alexandra Thu Alexandra. What's the L? And then on my second read, I realized that the L is the Roman numeral 50. She is the 50th Alexandra in her family line. She's a royal. All of her fucking ancestors have been named Alexandra. And then I realized that Alexandra through Alexandra means like Alexandra, daughter of Alexandra, or like child. I don't know if Thu is gendered. That's what I would focus on my third reread of Metal from Heaven. I don't know if there's any male characters from the same region, and if they have like a different descriptive title, if it means like son of or daughter of. It's like the Hebrew bar versus bot naming convention. There's not a lot of male characters in this book, so I don't know if I'd even get an answer on that, but I will look out for that in my next reread. But in the Felicity Complex, some more weird-ass names. Basically, everyone has weird-ass names. Like 70% of these people have weird names. So we have the creator of the Materia Prima specimens, the scientist in charge, is named Dr. Young Husband. He is an old, unmarried man. There is some depth there. You could analyze that name in maybe several different ways. Some of them are spoilers. Maybe not. There's some implications that he's gay. And so the fact that he's old and unmarried, I don't know, maybe he wanted a young husband at some point. You know what I mean? There's something there. Mr. Pink is the name of the billionaire in the billionaire family. I don't really know what that means. You can sit down and think about it. I haven't done that yet. Maybe on another reread. Hallelujah also being the main character's name. That definitely says something. That evokes something. I haven't thought about that one a lot either. But the only specimen with a normal name is Anastasia. And she's named after, specifically it says, the Russian princess that died. I don't know history that well. I'm sure that made something as well. But all the other specimens have weird names. Oklahoma, Cleopatra, Thumbelina, and Ballerina. Those are the other 4 specimens. We get introduced to those 4 all together in the same scene, and I was like, oh no, 4 characters. I gotta parse them and figure them out. And then I quickly realized that they all have the wrong names, intentionally. So these names were just given to them by Mr. Pink. the guy. He just picked out 6 names that he thought embodied Americana or, fantasy or princesses or royalty, things like that. And then he just gave them to the specimens with no concept of how these specimens are like people with their own personalities. He just distributed names randomly, uncaring. And then when we meet the specimens and we see their personalities, we realize that he got this shit all fucking wrong. And that introductory scene is a great way of showing that. So Thumbelina is like the matronly one. She's bigger. I don't know that she's actually big. They all like sort of fit traditional ideals of femininity. So I'm imagining they're all skinny people. But she sort of has this bigger personality. She's the chef. She's the motherly one. But you'd think Thumbelina would be the name of like the smallest one, the small little dainty one. I don't actually know the story of Thumbelina, but she's like a little fairy. But anyway, like the really small, shy one that you'd think maybe would be Thumbelina is Ballerina. I liked Ballerina. She was really interesting. She is the least human. There's a point where they're talking about like how would they survive on the outside? Could they pretend to be human? And someone's talking about Ballerina and they're like, she doesn't even try. She's not human. She doesn't even try to be human. She's like a weird little spider monster that likes to crawl around in the vents. I mean, she's human shaped. Like, she looks like a girl. But, like, she's a weird spider monster that likes to crawl around in the walls. And you think, like, Ballerina, very, like, traditional, maybe outgoing, sort of, like, faces of femininity. And, like, actresses. Ballerinas are actresses. They're playing roles. And she doesn't even try to play the role that she was assigned, the one role she was assigned. But she also hates to be seen in ballerinas on stage. Again, actresses, they like to be seen by people. They like to affect people, inspire people with their movement, artsy, the creativeness, whatever. You know what a ballerina is. And she does not want to be seen. She does not want to interact with these people. She doesn't really talk very much at all. She especially doesn't want to talk to the guests. She does not fit the name ballerina. The one who fits the name ballerina is Cleopatra, who very soon in that introductory scene like gets up on her chair and starts spinning around. That's a ballerina. I don't know who should be named Cleopatra. I don't know who should be named Oklahoma. They give Oklahoma like the southern accent, like they make her learn a southern accent, and so by the end she kind of does feel like an Oklahoma. But I also don't know like what the word Oklahoma means. There's probably something there. August Clarke probably had an idea of, like, which character fit which name best. And I don't think that all of them fit their name. Maybe some do fit their name. Like, if you were just randomly assigning a bag of names to a classroom of students, like, you'd probably get, like, one right coincidentally, maybe. You know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't thought about it totally. I just read this book a couple days ago. So something to consider on reread. A lot to analyze here. Obviously, the names are very important. And knowing August Clarke, they're probably overthought. Like, they're probably important in so many more ways. It's not just like, I don't know, they picked a random funky name out of a hat. Like, there's a guy named Dr. Slaggle. I don't know what Slaggle means. I like saying his name, Dr. Slaggle. Even Dr. Younghusband. I had to look up if that was a real name, because that sounds fucking fake. It's a real name. Never heard that. A lot to analyze here. And then also, like, the names of the rooms in the complex. There's like the True Love Gymnasium and Spa, the Mahogany Room. That doesn't mean it. I don't know. It's like the lounge, like the man cave bar lounge. So I'm sure it's looks like it's made out of mahogany. And then True Love might be named after one of the investors, but it also might be a reference to some. I don't know. I'm sure August Clarke had some thoughts going. I'm sure you could write your English class essays about this. This book had discussion questions in the back, which I don't know why books get discussion questions. I genuinely like don't know the purpose, unless it's for children in a classroom, maybe book clubs. I don't know who writes those. I don't know who those are for. It was definitely giving like I'm 14 years old in an English class and my teacher's gonna make me like pick 3 of the questions and like write mini essays about them. And I didn't want to. I had the strong gut reaction of I don't wanna. This assignment's stupid. And I was a straight A student who didn't mind writing an essay, and also I'm a massive August Clarke fan. So if I don't want to write an English class essay, on the Felicity Complex. I don't know who does. It doesn't tell you to write an essay. It's just discussion questions that sound like they're written for 14-year-olds. And I don't think 14-year-olds are reading this book. Call me crazy. I don't think this one's going in school curriculums anytime soon. I think a teenager could read it. Like, it's not overly graphic. Again, the sexual stuff is mostly referenced and mostly happens off page. There's like one major sexual violence scene that's a little more graphic than the others. But there's like, language. Anastasia says that Hallelujah will suck someone off once. I don't know if that's an anachronism, because these specimens were built in the 70s, and then they've been trapped underground for 100 years. So their vocabulary wouldn't have extended beyond the 70s. Maybe people in the 70s sucked each other off. I'm sure they did. Oh, I know they did. But I don't know if they called it that. Like, the phrasing. I think there were maybe a couple points where I was like, is that, like, anachronistic? Like, does that fit the time frame? Maybe it does. I don't know jack shit about the 70s. And they were reading, like, skin mags from the 70s, so maybe they've picked up this terminology from valid sources, and that's a real thing. I don't know. Something to think about that I might analyze on a second read. But I don't know that if I were a teacher, I would be teaching this to my class necessarily. I don't know if the school would approve that. I don't know this book is for 14-year-olds, but let's read the discussion questions that sounded like they were for 14-year-olds. After witnessing the abuse inflicted upon Hallelujah and the other specimens, do you think their revenge is justified? Brother, I'm 30. I'm reading an August Clarke book. Who is this for? Is this for, like, book clubs of dumb people? No offense. Some of them aren't like that on the notes. Like, what do you mean the women that have been abused for 100 years? You think they maybe deserve a little retribution? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. No. Oh my god, I hadn't... Do they deserve revenge? That's crazy. Wow, you opened my eyes there. Do the specimens experience freedom over the course of the book? I mean, okay, there's something there with, like, how they absolutely don't have freedom, but they sort of make their own and, like, make do and do what they have. Like, you could talk about that. They're not, like, the worst discussion questions I've ever seen in my life, but it does feel like I'm reading a 14-year-old's English assignment, and I don't know why. Why is that there? What parts of this story did you find satirical or humorous? What kind of social commentary was being portrayed? Brother, I'm 30. Who writes these? And, like, if I go to a book club, if I read this book for a book club, and then I rock up, and the discussion leader's like, so, like, did you think there was any social commentary in this book? What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about? I don't know that this book club's on my level. Sorry, I'm just way too smart for these people. Do you think any of these characters are morally wrong for their acts against others? How so? Oh, you mean the abuse? Yeah, I'd say that's morally wrong. I'm being slightly facetious. That question does also mention, like, are the actions of the other specimens wrong? And there's some points in the novel where, things aren't fantastic, and the girls bicker. That was maybe one complaint I sort of had, if you want to call it a complaint. So they are trapped in this bunker for 100 years, no access to the outside world, just the 6 of them. And you learn in the after chapters that something has happened in the before chapters that makes some of the characters have some tense relationships with each other. I won't spoil anything. I won't, like, spoil who it is. But basically they hold a grudge for 100 years, which, like, that's gay. That's pretty gay. You're locked in a bunker with your ex-girlfriend for 100 years, and you hold the grudge for 100 years. That is gay, but also, holy fuck. At some point in 100 years, you'd think he would have just had the conversation and, like, worked it out, 100 years. And you're stuck together in a room for 100 years. You're telling me they've never talked about their problems until, like, now? Like, when we're introduced to the after timeline in the book? That's crazy. You'd expect them to have worked something out by then. And then fought about something else. And then got back together. And then fought about something else. And then got back together. And then fought about something else. And then got back together. 100 years of dyke drama where you're literally like you're just stuck together. That's it. There's no other options. Except the other specimens, which is another reason why I wanted more specimen commingling. One, I thought it might just be a big polycule, because why not? You know what I mean? All they have is each other, and they do love each other, and they are all friends, even if they sometimes bicker between them, sometimes don't agree on things. Ultimately, all they have is each other, and they're the only people who will ever understand them totally. And then also, if you were mad at your girlfriend, go fuck some other specimens. I want dyke drama. I wanted 100 years of miscellaneous dyke drama stuck in this bunker. And we really don't get hardly any insight into that at all. Really, their life in the last 100 years, except that it's gone to shit and they've totally run out of supplies and everything's fucked. And the bunker doesn't work because the billionaires they're building it to like luxury standards, and they just think that things are magically going to work out. And like the hydroponic gardens are just magically going to run forever when you only have one person staffing it, and that person was born yesterday and you just taught her how to run a hydroponic garden. Like, it's ridiculous, and that's the point, is to show like how ridiculous these people are, and like what they want, and like what they prioritize, and also their fears. But we are at like the height of the Red Scare. Like, this guy's building this bunker because he thinks the communists are going to nuclear bomb everything at any point in time. And obviously, knowing our history, human decimation is not immediately around the corner. But it is fun kind of watching them do their jobs, because they don't know what they're doing. Hallelujah especially, she is the nurse on board. But nurse means like doctor and surgeon. And so she's sort of training with Dr. Younghusband and some of the other scientists, but she's also a little bit stupid. There's a point where she's doing brain surgery on someone, and you're like, oh no, this woman is not qualified to be doing brain surgery on anyone. But in that specific moment, her patient is a dickbag, and so you're like, thank God she's not qualified to do the surgery. That guy's fucked. And it really highlights how they're playing these roles. Like, they're actors. Like, they don't know what they're doing. They don't love what they're doing. Hallelujah kind of does, but she doesn't know what she's doing, and so she loves the idea of like pleasing these people and like doing her job correctly and like being the model specimen. But they're not equipped for this, and they know it, and everyone kind of knows it. But the billionaires are just like, but it looks good for the investors. The Mr. Pink is very concerned with like getting a film crew in to like show off the bunker, get investors for the bunker, get people to buy in so that they have a room in case of nuclear apocalypse, so that he has a bunch of money to build a bunker and then also keep a bunch of money for himself. Like, the priorities are all fucked. The fears are all fucked and like irrational. And this does a good job highlighting that. Again, I don't think this is like the most unique idea in the world. Like, there's other sort of robot girl specimen stories, and there's other, billionaires doomsday prepping stories. So I don't think this is like the most unique August Clarke book, but I still had fun with it. I liked this version of that story. I wish it had been a little bit gayer. Like, it's still gay, but really I was expecting a lot more gender stuff and like trans stuff, because August Clarke is a non-binary author, and I thought like a queer author could really like get into like the meat of the gender stuff that goes on with like this sort of like feminism robot girl story, because a lot of them just focus on like what makes a woman and like what are the expectations of women, but they do it through like just a female feminism lens, and I think you could really explore like gender a lot there, like a lot deeper, like through a trans perspective with this kind of story. I don't think it goes as far as I sort of expected it to, but there is like little commentary. It's definitely inklings of that there that you could read into and think about. What else do I want to yap about? I've said a lot. We could talk about the cover. I didn't love this cover. I've seen it enough now that I'm sort of desensitized to looking at it. But I feel like the first time I saw this cover, I audibly went, ew. Low-key, it looks AI. It's not AI. And I didn't think it was AI because this publisher doesn't have any other books that look AI. And I looked up the artist, and they just kind of, their work just looks like that. And AI looks like that because it steals work from real artists like this. Who knew? And it also just didn't make sense to have this book by August Clarke about the follies of billionaires to have an AI book cover. What a choice that would be. So I knew it wasn't AI, but it low-key, it looks a little bit AI. I feel like if I saw this in the library or at the store with no context of who the publisher was or who August Clarke was or like what the book was about, I'd be like, is that AI? And then I'd maybe pick up something else. But I might be in the minority there. NetGalley has a feature where you can rank whether you like or dislike the book cover, and right now it's at 46 to 9, which is a small sample size and also not the greatest percentage difference, but it is mostly positive, so that's good. So maybe that's not a fear, because I do want people to read this. I like August Clarke a lot, and I like this book, and I'd recommend it, and I don't want anyone to look at it and be put off just because of the cover. So it seems like most people like it. Not the greatest ratio in the world, but whatever. I like the colors, and I like the font. It has that sort of retro font, which I think really works for this, and it does read as sci-fi, and I don't know how well you can tell, but the lettering is sort of blurry, and almost looks like dust debris is clouding it from the Fallout blast. I think that's a nice little touch. That's interesting. I don't love the sort of mushroom cloud that looks like a mushroom. That looks like you asked ChatGPT to draw you a mushroom cloud, and it goes, yes, I know what a mushroom cloud is. I also know what a mushroom is. Did you want both? You wanted both. I got you. And that's not what you wanted. I guess it doesn't look that much like a mushroom, but it kind of looks like an actual mushroom top. And there's no mushrooms in this book. I think they are actually growing some in the hydroponic gardens, but like, it's just a random detail, not relevant to the book. I don't think it's supposed to look like a real mushroom. I guess it kind of doesn't. It reads as mushroom cloud. That's fine. Slight spoilers. There's no nuclear apocalypse in this. The nuclear bombs never drop. So it does kind of make you think that there actually is nuclear warfare going on in this, and there isn't. But the threat is always there, because the billionaires are worried about it, and they've sort of taught these specimens that, you know, the world's all going to end in nuclear fire, and you are going to be the only people who survive, you and the important rich people, and it's an honor that you get to live in this bunker forever. So, like, there's the constant threat of nuclear apocalypse, so, like, that, it works out, I guess. There's the little fallout door. That's a little detail down there that you might miss. I mean, most of the book takes place in the bunker, or in the laboratory, and not really outside the door. We only see outside the door a couple of times, and one being, like, when the refugees enter the bunker 100 years later. We sort of see that from their perspective. But it's weird that we're, like, outside of the bunker, when the point is that they're inside of the bunker. They're trapped. But, like, I'm really nitpicking. And I'm also not a graphic designer, so I have absolutely no qualifications to be analyzing this or correcting it. I also don't love that there's 7 women on the cover. There's 6 specimens. Theoretically, you could argue that several different people represent this 7th specimen on the cover. There were hundreds of specimens created before that, you know, were failed experiments and got scrapped or, like, repurposed. There's not really 7 specimens. You could kind of argue something there, but I don't like that there's 7 of them, and I don't like that they're identical. These are not clones. These are all different batches of specimens, and they all look different, and that's very much a thing. When Mr. Pink sees Hallelujah for the first time, he thinks, this one isn't as pretty as some of the others. And that's relevant, and some of the others have, like, physical problems. Oklahoma keeps growing, like, little tumors. Like, she has, like, warts all over her because she's just extra prone to morphing wrong. And their bodies are in, like, a constant change. They have this serum, this medicine that sort of keeps them intact, but if they don't have access to that, or even when they do have access to that, the sort of material life they're constructed out of is, like, it's not, like, human stable. It's funky and weird. They're, like, weird slime monsters if you let them run loose and don't force them into the confines of this womanly body and, like, actively chop off parts that grow wrong and things like that. So these are not robot clones. These are women who all look different. And, like, Anastasia's the beautiful one. They all have different hair colors. They all embody, like, different ideals of feminine beauty. So to make them all look the same feels weird. But, I mean, you get the vibe. I mean, these are just seen as objects. They all serve the same purpose, ultimately, even if they have different jobs. They're all just servants. The billionaires and the scientists in charge don't see them as individual people. They're lumped together as the help, the specimens. I mean, metaphorically, it kind of works. And it conveys what you need it to convey. You know that this is a weird book about like fake women. Even like the AI fakeness look of it sort of fits that these are artificial women created by billionaires. So like it kind of worked. Like I kind of get it. It's a little bit ugly. It's a little bit ugly to me, but not to most people. So that's good. I'm the outlier. I don't know. It's kind of grown on me. I don't like hate it. When I saw it, I didn't like it, but it's whatever now. I'm used to it. I've seen it enough. Other people seem to like it. Sure. I'm glad. I don't want it to be hot garbage. I'll accept my bad opinion there. I do specifically like the orange and purple colors. There's a point later in the novel where like we're talking about weird specimen goop, and it's specifically described as like these sort of orange and reds and purples. So that was a good color palette combination. The cover is not hideous enough to detract me from buying a copy, or to add to the August Clarke shelf. I'll get the hardback when it comes out. I'll probably pre-order it. I don't know if there's a pre-order campaign. There might not be, but I'm sort of waiting to see, because the publisher hasn't even really like announced this book yet. It doesn't come out till July, so I want to see if there's a pre-order campaign, and if not, I'll pre-order it. But sometimes you pre-order from specific stores. You know what books are. I think the only August Clarke book that's ever had a pre-order campaign was The Scratch Daughters, that came with like a little art print. I didn't love that art print either. It was like a drawing of Mr. Scratch, but he looked too humanoid. I'm like, that's not my Mr. Scratch. My Mr. Scratch is a undefined ink blob. That's too human. Not my Mr. Scratch. So I missed out on that one, but I hadn't heard of that book when it was coming out, so like I wasn't around to pre-order that. I probably would have. I'll pre-order this, and then I'll get the paperback copy if that ever comes out. It'll go on the August Clarke shelf that I've got. I didn't mean to collect every edition of every August Clarke book, but at some point I picked up a couple that were like really cheap, that were like used books, and at some point I looked and I was like, I've got like 75% of every August Clarke book that's ever been published, every edition. What if I just had 100? And then now we're on our way to that. We're not complete. I need the hardback of the Feastmakers. The paperback from Heaven isn't out yet. There's a UK paperback that I don't have either. I might get that. I'm gonna get the US paperback. I might get the UK paperback. We might have a problem, guys. I feel like if you have a book YouTube channel, you're allowed to collect a couple of authors. You know what I mean? So I'm not that ashamed of my overconsumption. But I've also reread Metal from Heaven, and I will reread The Scapegracers and this book probably. So like, multiple copies for multiple readings. It makes sense. That's valid. But I'm very glad that I got to read an arc of this. It was very fun. I enjoyed it. I feel special. This was a good book. How does it stack up in the August Clarke canon? Honestly, I'd probably put this at the bottom, but I still really enjoyed it. I still can't decide if Metal from Heaven or Scapegracers as a collective is my favorite. They're both so good, and they're pretty different. And so, like, I don't know. I can't pick, but I think this one is like a third place. But like a third place with a bronze medal. I mean, there's only 3 entries, but like it's still medals. It's a good book. I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I'll probably reread it. Just not my absolute favorite August Clarke book. This one's shorter. It's got a sort of different point of view character. It's funnier. It's like horror. It's sci-fi. It's sort of a different genre than the fantasy. Metal from Heaven is like second world fantasy with a lot of different countries and world building, and then the Scapegracers is YA urban fantasy, and so like all these books are different genres as well, which makes it hard to compare them. But it was a good book. Who cares? I don't have to rank it. I think that's a long yap session, typical of me, but I was really excited for this. This was my most anticipated book of the year. Lived up to the name. I'm really happy to have read this. I'm really happy for it to come out. I'm happy to have a physical copy and hold it in my hands and reread it. I don't think it'll be drastically different. I only noticed like a couple of typos. Like I think like 2 typos. And one was like, they used the wrong word. It was like literally a typo. So I don't suspect the final copy will be drastically different than the art copy. They usually aren't. But I'm excited to read it and see. I recommend this if you like sci-fi, if you like satire, and like evil billionaires and robot girls. is a good genre. I like the genre. And I'd also recommend all of August Clarke's other books, specifically Metal from Heaven, if you like sort of adult fantasy. There's a preview of the first chapter of Metal from Heaven at the end of this arc, which slaps. What a good first chapter that is. Holy fuck. So if this is your first August Clarke book, I recommend reading the preview of Metal from Heaven that's at the end of this book, and then going and buying Metal from Heaven and sitting with that and analyzing it and letting that blow your mind. Oh, but I think that's it. I probably missed something. Who cares? I'll probably reread it and then talk about it again, and then I can get back to whatever I missed. But whatever. Have a good day or good night. Enjoy your reading. Peace out.